It's
Hello.
Friday. It's our favorite day of the week, right?
I mean, I love this day. It's a nice rainy day in New York, although we don't have the atmospheric rivers that are decimating Southern California right now. But I
Yeah.
love Friday.
Yeah, well, good. We are so happy to be here. I'm Jessica Lasewski. I'm your host. I am here again with a very well-dressed Nick Kaplan, who I'm pretty sure is hitting CNBC commentator status with this elevated wardrobe you're trying to bring every Friday.
You try to sit in Rick Watson's chair every Friday, and I had to elevate my game mentally. And I figured, like a method actor, I'd really get into character and I would bring it. This is what I got.
Well, you're
It's my
bringing it.
reporter.
You're bringing it. I'm
Yeah.
feeling like a little underdressed. So, do you want to hit us with any fun facts of the day? I think people are enjoying what happened on this day when.
So some good things happened today, actually. So let's start off with Grand Central Station, one of the pride and joys of New York City, opens in 1914. 1924, first Winter Olympics in Chamonix. Buddy Holly's last performance, sadly, is today. Vince Lombardi joins the Packers, which is pretty kind of much of a prelude to the greatness coming a week from Sunday.
Right.
U.S. postage stamps jumped from 25 cents to 29 cents. Oh, how much we would love to go back.
Back in those days.
Right? That's
Do
19.
people really mail things anymore?
By the way, as an aside, someone needs to privatize the post office. Maybe Amazon? 2021, Bezos announces today he is stepping down. He'll always be like Amazon.
He's still doing okay. Got a new girlfriend, all the things.
Right. He's like so buff. He's like so buff, by the way. It's crazy. Also in 2021, Pete Buttigieg becomes the first openly gay confirmed member of a cabinet, which is amazing.
Awesome.
So those are our fun facts for the day, Jess.
Yes, thank you for bringing that. A pretty major thing happened. It happens every February 2nd. It is Groundhog Day, and the groundhog did not see his shadow. It's early spring. I'm celebrating that. And I think that it's a little ominous, not ominous, but it's a little prelude to these beautiful headlines ahead that we're going to talk through in this story. Some are springy, some are somber. Am I bringing the spring and you're bringing the somber?
If the past is the prologue to the future, then yes. And by the way, as like a very like sort of linear thinker that's data and fact based, I always have this conversation with my children on this day, which is it's not really real.
But it's like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. Come on, it's a tradition. We love it. We're gonna celebrate it. There's no more snow after today. Spring is ahead.
What do you mean no more snow? We talked last week about TikTok as a search engine. And I said, as long as people don't get their news from TikTok, I'm fine with it. But I did see snow in San Diego yesterday on TikTok.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. You're already breaking the molds. We also have a lot to unpack. Do you want to talk us through the headlines? Because we felt like we had so much to talk about. We wanted to dedicate a portion of the show. And then we do have a surprise guest for those of you watching. And I'm pretty sure that's why we have thousands and thousands of people tuned in, because they're just not sure what we're going to break out.
I think the suspense is killing everybody.
Everybody.
It was a great, interesting, crazy week. So we had things happen today. We had things happen throughout the week. I think I read 458 earnings calls happened this week, a bonanza. There is a ton to talk about. So let's run through the topics real quick. Our headline hangover segment, which will be the show. And we're going to talk a bit about the retail media craze. It's everywhere, continues to gain momentum. We're going to talk a bit about the social media moment that the social media heads had in the Senate this week, which got a lot of news. You made the joke about the annual Zuckerberg meeting in the Senate. And we're going to talk a bit about some of the earnings calls, Amazon specifically. And then there was a lot of impactful kind of Fed data, job data that came out this week. And we're going to unpack that and sort of take some views and talk about it with specifics. But bringing it up to the top, retail media. What say you, Jess?
Oh, retail media. It is, I think I'm going to steal your phrase. It is the new corporate tax. It is the pay to play of you want to be here, you got to pay the piper. And we know a lot of companies really building businesses in the backbone of their businesses and fueling their profits through retail media. And I know you've got a lot of firsthand experience. You want to kind of talk about the way you dealt with it a long time ago, but then let's kind of talk about even we'll unpack it in the Amazon earnings as well.
So it seems like retail media is at every conference, it's in every conversation, engagements. And I think as we look at an industry that is transforming, in some cases by choice, and in some cases not by choice, but all the while happening, retail media has become a way to bolster the bottom line. And as companies look to sort of right size, and we've talked a bit about the org of the future, and we've talked about where jobs are heading, we've talked about how companies are rationalizing outsourced roles versus in-house roles, and we talked about layoffs, and we'll talk a bit about some of that news this week. Retail media is sort of an easy land grab, right? In the sense that people have they have real estate, it's available, it's getting eyeballs, and advertising is and has been a major business in the world for, I heard something yesterday that I can't remember, but it's really incredible as to what a pillar it is. So if I'm Amazon, who really largely brought it to bear, and I have all this traffic and I have all these people looking for a leg up, I can effectively create a retail media network. And so I think what's happening, though, as the Macy's and others, the Kohl's, get into the game, it becomes like a quid pro quo, which is to say, brand X, if you want to sort of be prioritized, oh yeah, and if you want a bigger buy, we have an opportunity, and I'll put air quotes, opportunity for you. And, for me, I think what makes me sort of me, I grew up as a merchant. I grew up at Saks. I basically was a buyer, and I think understanding product was really important. And so in my days at Saks, we, at the end of the season, we tallied our markdowns and we went to our vendors and said, hey, like, here's your bill, pay your bill. Right. And we did a lot of things that, ultimately in 2005, there were executives fired at Saks. There's an article in Times about it if you Google it. And by the way, Mark Metrick, who's the head of Saks, we grew up together. I think he's a brilliant, honorable person. So this is long ago. I love him. He's a really smart guy, so I'll qualify that. But what I'd say is, like, we did a lot of things that basically it was like built into the pricing and people paid rent. And so I guess long story short is that's what retail media is today as I see it. It's a pay to play land grab and a necessity. You know who ultimately pays for it, Jess?
The consumer.
Consumer. So thus, I'd say it's sort of the moment and it's happening, but I think that it is a short-term occurrence that will have some repercussions as we look at inflation, we look at pricing, we look at consumer debt, we look at pricing that needs to get better, not worse, and who ultimately pays for it and how these businesses work.
Yeah, so but this is the drug that I feel like, though, this is the drug that the people get hooked on, right? Like, this is the injection of the fueling the profitability that people can't let go of. I mean, eBay tried it, got hooked on it in different ways. You have Amazon now. It's one of the growth stories. You have Etsy in their earnings calls. It's one of the only things that's growing. And I do believe that it's not going to be short term because it's just so addictive. And at some point, it will pass down to the consumer. But if the consumer has backlash, it's not coming back to retail media. It's just too much ingrained into the P&Ls in this state.
So in this case, I actually will agree with you. I think that it is not short term. Let me clarify what I'm saying. Yeah. Retail media is good in the sense that if people, Simon Malls, Macy's, Target, Walmart, are creating environments where people want to go, and a person inside or outside of their sort of ecosystem wants to leverage that opportunity, there's a model that says that they should pay for that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's healthy. No, not dissimilar to Facebook, right? That is Facebook and Google.
Sure.
And the pandemic and the sort of growth of digital has driven those prices up to a place where honestly, a lot of small businesses, people I work with are trying to think of alternative ways. What I would say is that retail media is not a silver bullet. Unhealthy businesses are unhealthy businesses. And as they tout retail media, they're going out to their vendor community and saying, hey, we need you to give us 10% back of purchases in the form of retail media. It's not sustainable. And I guess
I
that,
totally agree with that. Yes.
right?
Yes,
So I think
I
it should
totally
be
agree with
viewed as like a channel. It should be attributed in Google Analytics, which it's a whole nother conversation what everyone hates GA4. What were you thinking, Google? But it should be its own source of traffic. It should be thought of as such and utilized as such. So
yeah.
but
So you brought up some of the biggest proponents of retail media, and they actually showed up in our friends at DC this week. So does Zuckerberg just have a permanent parking spot now outside of Congress? Do people just like, hey, they high five him on the way in because they're just so used to seeing his face around? What's going on?
well, it was a really interesting occurrence. I think it was incredibly politicized. I watched some of the clips and found the theatrics a little bit over the top.
It's always
However, no, I'm from Singapore.
my other favorite one was, we could regulate you out of business if we wanted to. Could you, Tom?
Right.
That's Tom Tillis, represent NC right
Right.
there. But could you, Tom? I don't know. No.
I think there's a couple of interesting things to unpack. One is it law or Article 234, I think, right? Which is effectively, it protects all the media companies. And it says, like, you're not responsible for the content that you are allowing people to serve, right? And that's First Amendment. That's like a really deep topic. Two is, what no one talks about is what are parents and families doing? Like, how are these kids getting these devices and phones? And I'm a father of two young children, and I'm grappling this myself. And it's really hard, but I think that there's like, that doesn't come to bear. And then three is, what really is the responsibility? How are these companies kind of held accountable to documents that have been produced, known conversations, et cetera, that talks about the addictive components that they're specifically, they're gamifying. So I think it's a lot, but ultimately to parade them into the Senate, it's not the answer. There needs to be an answer, and there needs to be some, in my opinion, regulation, but I don't know how getting Zuckerberg in the Senate to grill him again and asking him to stand up and apologize to a family of children impacted by this because he has blood on his hands is anything other than theatrical and not productive.
We're not solving the real problem, which is we do have to tackle not only the social media problem, but just the phone addiction problem. I heard today that 10 minutes, when you're looking at your phone every 10 minutes, it's the same as like smoking weed. And this is in a medical journal. I'm not making up like crazy facts here. And it is a epidemic that we have in a different kind of way. And to your point, there's got to be all parties being responsible. I think it certainly starts with the parents. It certainly also has some accountability within the social media networks because they have built their algorithms to be addictive, to have all of this clickbait, to get people on. So I think that to your point, the Congress isn't going to solve this problem, but we definitely need a reality check here.
The mobile device, right? Kind of the genius behind it from Steve Jobs, the ecosystem is so important to sort of think about and recognize, because while on the one hand, social media is so addictive, people are truly, which is a problem, getting their news from TikTok. People are shopping productively, right? Price comparing. There needs to be a lot of regulation as it pertains to children. You don't have to get your child an iPhone. You can get your child a phone. I don't want my kid running around being like, my dad got me a burner phone.
We have kept our guest on the back burner, and I want to bring our mystery guest out for this topic. It's the man with the plan.
Welcome back. You're muted.
You're on mute.
Talk about out of practice. What?
You're an easy target.
Come on, it's just a little mute button. Hit it.
I'm super happy to be back. I'm super happy to be alongside Nick and reunited with my old compadre, Jess. You guys have been doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to keeping this rolling, and I'm excited to get on with the show.
We know the notebook guy loves earnings and loves earning calls, and Amazon really gave you almost like your own little Netflix special. So you want to break it down for us and what you heard from your boys and the crew?
We do here on this show. Ironically enough, on the Amazon's earnings call this week, word of the week is tumultuous. And tumultuous is a good explanation for Amazon's last 3 years. On this day, ironically, Jeff Bezos announced he was stepping down from Amazon. There's been a lot of questions. Could anyone fill his shoes? Andy Jassy is one of the, I would say, most, quote unquote, Jeff bot-like disciples of Amazon's Jeff Bezos, the original founder. He thinks most like him. I don't know if he dresses like him, but he's not as buff as Jeff, right? At least right now, anyway. Yeah. His yacht is smaller, pun intended. From a tumultuous point of view, is 2021, where are we in the pandemic? Like, Jeff is like, I'm going out on top. The world is going literally to hell. There is a plague. Peace out, bitches. I'm gone. And then from there, he's like, here's the new guy. By the way, 2022, it's pretty terrible. Profitability very far down. The company lost money for the first time in 10 years. And we're like, Andy Jassy, maybe he's not the right guy. And now it's like, it's 2023, bitches. Here I am. By the way, yeah, you're my boy, Blue. And here we're going to go with, we're going to regionalize our fulfillment network. This is really a move that no one, and I think we have some slides related to Amazon's earnings call, which was literally yesterday. And so net sales increased 12%, which is solid for an online retailer. Walmart beat this by a little bit, mostly due to consumers flocking to low-priced, kind of subscription replenishable inventory, which is the specialty of Walmart. But for Amazon to be such a broad-based retailer and increase net sales by 12%, it's a super solid number. It's kind of the bellwether for the internet sector. That's not like beauty. Beauty has been like the leader, I would say, throughout the last year in terms of growth rate. The big stories from a turnaround point of view was like, oh yeah, you guys forgot about me. And speaking of forgot about Dre, we remembered how to make money. And so last year we had $2.8 billion loss. Our net income was $30 billion, where we lost $3 billion last year. So I'll stop there for a second. Has Andy Jassy proven his chops?
Yes. I think he's proven that he can not only set the strategy and execute the strategy, but keep the company rallied around it. I think he's proved the doubters wrong, and that he has got what it takes to carry the brand forward. Not only did he rattle off all those amazing financial stats from a P&L perspective, but look at what they've done with the fulfillment network. And you've talked a lot about this, the regionalization of the fulfillment network and how successful that has been. And it was 65% of items were delivered in a day or less. They've just continued to hit on the metrics that matter and set the goal, set the North Star, and delivered.
2024, AWS is predicted to be a $100 billion business. By 2026, the company is expected to have $100 billion in free cash flow. This is by analyst Scott Devitt at Wedbush. And they think that the ads business by 2028 could be a $100 billion business overall. This past year in 2023, the ads business is now $46 billion. What do you think about the growth of the ads business, Nick? Is it sustainable?
Andy Jassy proved in sort of quieting his doubters, and they were loud, was that to form a strategy, it's kind of like what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, and most importantly, how you're going to do it. And they did it. And so he continues to set the standard, which is something that I think Jeff was really great at. And to Jess's point about delivery, that's really getting people there. And so when you make a market in advertising, it's about traffic and quality of traffic. And I don't see that stopping. I think that Amazon in that sense is a runaway freight train. So I think that is very realistic that they can achieve that goal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Jassy has kind of proven his chops. And I think as an operator, he's proved he's on the level of Jeff Bezos. One of our commenters asking if it's going to be a tumultuous year. In 2023, they saw a lot of AWS customers pull back on spending. Like, we're going to move compute out of the cloud. We're not going to invest as much. Amazon pretty much indicated that people were investing in new projects again. They're moving more compute into the cloud, a lot of it for AI, not huge numbers yet, but from a growth trajectory, it's huge. I think for e-commerce SaaS companies, that actually tells a good story for 2024 that Linda Bustos, who's I know is on the call, is listening. I think that would mean it's 2024 for SaaS vendors is a less tumultuous year than 2023.
Yeah. And Rick, Peter brought, like, I think brings up this great point about Walmart and are they going to eat Amazon's lunch? Is Amazon afraid of Walmart? Are they afraid of Temu, Shein? Like, is there anything in the earnings calls that, they hinted to of, hey, we're watching this XYZ retailer from afar, and here's how we're playing defense or offense.
One hidden comment I got about there was one section of the earnings call in the Q&A where Andy Jassy was talking about what it takes to compete in low price retail, low ASP or average selling price products, and to that you have to have a low cost to serve. And to have a low cost to serve, it means you have to get products out very quickly and have the inventory very close to the consumer. Or ironically, in the case of Temu and Alibaba, very far from the consumer, but keep it all in one place and manufacture it at the last minute based on trends. And so those are the two models. And I think any model that's in between has almost shown that it's not going to survive.
Amazon is trading on trust and Alibaba and Temu are trading on price. Amazon pioneered the review model. And I think we were just chatting, I can't remember in which forum yesterday, about the release of App Viewfinder, right? Like, what is it exactly called? Apple's View, their AR device?
Yes, it's like Apple's not a lot of people going to buy it. That's my...
Exactly. But you know what? Eventually it's going to get there. And, Amazon Sony was a brand everyone trusted, so you bought a Sony TV. Now you can go buy a TV called like Jinho Luck on Amazon for $400 that has 20,000 good reviews, and you'll buy it. So Amazon is trusted. There's transparency. Temu, there was a lot of talk this week about how they're acquiring customers, who they're going after, and is it really trustworthy? And it's just price. And that's really what Alibaba did.
Speaking of the Vision Pro, on the way to our breakfast, I walked by the Apple store and there was a line out looking for the Vision Pro. It wasn't like an iPhone 13 style line, but there's some dorks out there, waiting to strap a computer to their head.
Would you be one of those?
That's like going to be in New York in the big cities. I'm sorry. In my Raleigh, North Carolina store, I just don't think there's going to be a line waiting for the Vision Pro. Now, if there's a line of eggs that are less than $8, I think people would go line up for that.
I agree with you, and a lot of Tim Cook's legacy will be riding on this in terms of his product prowess. But success or fail, it was a huge step in AR, and I think that AR is real, and I think we saw a lot of that at NRF. We've heard a lot about it, and it makes perfect sense, right? There's a lot of conversations about AI and earnings calls and people getting dinged. Google was dinged for not really having AI as a big enough part of its conversation, its narrative, even though they achieved decent numbers. AI is about computing power. It is about giving us the ability to raise probabilities. And so I think that we're going to see this advancement in AR that will allow us to sort of be more functional, but it's a little ways away. But yeah, I don't think that I'm with Jess. No one's going out and like lining up to buy the Vision Pro.
Yeah. So I think we got to get to one more headline, which is what happened with the Fed. Speaking of vision, people had a lot of vision / hope that there was going to be some inclination of rate cuts. I don't know who these people are. They clearly were not watching the Watson weekend, because they would have heard that the promised land was not coming. So Jerome Powell went up. He kind of talked about where the economic state is. There was positivity for sure, but they're not cutting the rate. What other things do we have to unpack there, Nick, in the Fed update?
And here I think is where we kind of wind up on opposite sides. Things continue to be rosy? I mean, it's really remarkable to me. The Fed didn't touch rates. The markets are at an all-time high, the Dow. But then you also had JP Morgan come out with a really compelling analysis about the comparative between the dot-com bubble. I put together a little data, if we want to share it, just to talk about my feeling on where the world sits and the realities of it, as we're trading on the future. And I don't think the future is so bright that we have to wear shades. Let's take a look, if we can, at the slides on debt, because this is a super compelling slide. And it sort of showed that, today, the total household debt as of Q3 2023 was $17 trillion. So the average household has $103,000 of debt. Part of that debt is a mortgage, right? But there's still over $1 trillion of credit card debt. There's an average of $6,600 per household of credit card debt. When you factor in what the living wage is in the United States, which is about, according to the MIT analysis, it's about like $54,000, and how far below a big part of the population falls. To me, I understand that there was a lot of positivity, and I'm going to flip it back to you to kind of go through the happiness index. But when people are working multiple jobs, and when you look at that graph, the most telling piece is we had all this spend in Q4. We're just continuing to go out on margin, right? Like, we're spending money we don't have. And if you look at the gray, which is other, is growing. Credit card debt is growing. Credit cards are a predatory business. Credit is predatory. And I know that Rick loves to say that when you even look at this, the buy now, pay later, which has become a very large vehicle for people, isn't in there. So I am still and continue to be very bearish
on the market. Mic drop. That's why you're saying boom today, gloom tomorrow for your headline. So as we talk about what's the forward-looking statement relative to the credit card debt, the headlines do have mixed signals. The jobs report came out today, and the jobs report was extremely positive. And so as a lead into the happiness index, I just want to break that down. In the jobs report, it was 353,000 jobs versus a forecast of 176,500 for January. What do we think, guys?
Rick made a comment about our breakfast this morning. So to everyone watching, I have the pleasure of living close to Rick. And when I was a guest on the show originally, he made fun of me for ordering the same thing every time we went to breakfast. Well, I made him meet me in a different restaurant, and I did order a different dish.
I tried to order the same dish.
Rick went big. Jess, you'll appreciate this. Rick went big with the bacon, egg, and cheese. Good restaurant, terrible service. But you know what? The guy was like such a nice guy, but not a waiter, because they can't find people to work. So all this positive information keeps coming out about jobs. Where are these people working? Who are these people? Because all the companies I know are paring back. Now, our friend Adam Rose.
Adam, this is for Adam. Follow him if you don't, because he's got the jobs. He's listing the jobs, especially in the e-commerce retail industry. But let me tell you where the jobs came from, friends. We had 74,000 jobs in professional and business services, 70,000 in healthcare, 45,000 in retail trade. We had another 36,000 in government, and the list goes on. So that's at least the sectors. I think what people got excited about in this report was that it wasn't just government jobs. It wasn't just healthcare, which is where we have been. So how are we reconciling this with the layoffs that have happened, but now these other sectors outside of healthcare and government that have been hiring.
It's really unclear where the jobs are coming from. And I think it's like, is the government faking the numbers for Biden's reelection campaign? Oh yeah, I just went there. The jobs will be a contentious part of the election cycle this year, where the economy looks to be going well. The other side is going to say it's fake news, and the workers might say it's fake news too, because they're all being laid off. So like, if there are so many jobs, then why are you laying me off?
You're actually just leading me right to water, Rick, as we go to the Consumer Happiness Index, because we're going to unpack what the workers are feeling from a jobs perspective. And Bloomberg put out an article this week really around the notion of we have an employed American worker that is extremely unhappy. And I call this, these boots aren't made for walking, because they're not going anywhere. We are at the lowest levels of people who have quit their jobs or left their jobs since over 2022. We have this labor to leverage ratio, which is essentially looking at the quits level versus the layoff levels. So people are staying put ultimately because they don't have confidence in the future. And then the next slide that we're going to unpack is.
So you're saying they're not even quiet quitting. Especially if they have these boots on.
The boots would make a lot of noise. The heels would be clacking if you get my Devil Wears Prada reference. But yes, no, they're not walking. They're not clacking. They are maybe not even quiet quitting, because they want to. They're concerned about the state of the economy and what's in the future. And Glassdoor is actually in December promoted the lowest levels of consumer confidence or American worker confidence at 45% than they had seen since August of 2022. So the next data point that I want to talk about is not only are they staying put, and we can flip to the next slide, but they're working multiple jobs. And 23% of Americans are saying that they are working more jobs. They're working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. And 40% of people surveyed in this Harris Bloomberg poll in December said that they also just had to work 2 jobs in general. And so that's kind of a new thing. And the last data point is if you are out of work, it's taking a lot longer for you to find something new. So it's 22 weeks for unemployed workers to find a new job. And again, that's at the longest lead time, longest level that we've seen since 2021. So we have a lot of this, I think, disproportionate and conflicting data as we're talking about the American worker, and the jobs report that just came out and the momentum that it feels like is in the industry, and lots of beautiful headlines. But the worker today is not feeling that in their day to day.
I'll say, I mean, there are not that many people are happy with where they are, and many people, to your point, aren't leaving. It sounds like all the new jobs are just second jobs. I mean, it's not like there's a whole bunch of like new full-time jobs. It's more potentially part-time jobs, and they're doing more than one. Before, during the pandemic, they didn't have to show up to the office, so they could do 2 or 3 full-time jobs and afford to quiet quit one. And now they have to do part-time jobs because people are making them show up to work, actually.
Which is interesting also to unpack, because there's been so much talk about people coming back into the office, and we still see that happening. Yet there was a recent survey that only 4% of CEOs said they're really going to be enforcing this because they're having such a difficult time with it. So it feels like there's lots of trends changing, lots of, like I said, conflicting information, headlines that don't make sense. To Nick's point, where is the forward-looking data on when things crash and burn because of this credit card debt? And at some point, are we truly going to see a recession, and will it happen this year? And the jury's still out. I don't think anyone can definitively say yes or no.
I think we're in recession in Europe. There's a lot of reckoning. I think Rick's point is incredibly on about a lot of these jobs being second and third. I think we saw in some Fred data that there's a pretty large percentage of people who have 3 jobs. And, with these jobs come no benefits. So that's an added expense, and there's a lot to it. But yeah, I think we're going to see a recession this year. I hate to say it. And a lot of SaaS vendors coming out of NRF were talking positive and people talking about budgets and companies freeing up. But I just think that the purse strings continue to tighten as that credit card debt, car payments, mortgage payments need to be met. And oh yeah, by the way, article in the Washington Post today that over the last 4 years, food prices are up 25% and like they haven't come down. Like the milk tax is still happening. So there's a little bit of a land grab, I think, in a reset of that market, which also puts pressure on the consumer, which then ultimately ripples through. So I am recession.
I hope I'm holding out hope. Like I said, I'm sunshine. I hope that it's not a long winter, that we do get an early spring. I think the data is for sure concerning, and I do believe, though, to Rick's point, the election and the focus on the election might cause some interesting things to happen.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap this up, I think, in the beginning of last year, the whole choices were A, hard landing, meaning like deep recession, B, soft landing, mild recession, C, no landing. Most economists right now are predicting no landing. And so I'm on the sunny side of the street, and, let's use that to drive this home.
All right. Well, you're Elmo. We got Oscar the Grouch here, and I guess I'm Bert or Ernie, like answering in the door. So we've had a great show. I really appreciate everybody being with us on this very first Watson weekend in February. Lots more to come, and we are looking forward to Rick having you back, and Nick seeing what things hold for the future in the Watson weekend.
For sure. Short those.
Potentially a roving reporter in yours too, like a John Oliver type role.
That's what I said. I was like, he's going to be the John Oliver.
Yeah, like once you sort of like wedge your way in the door, it's like, I'm like a virus. It's not easy to get rid of me, but it's amazing. I think that what we're all doing in this forum and the community are incredible. And so here's to it. Most importantly, I'm just psyched to get to dance with Rick.
Exactly.
Awesome. So well, let's kick it off, guys.
We're noodling.